Hey guys, in today's video I'm installing an onboard air system into the Spooky Jeep here. If you're new here, welcome to my channel and don't forget to subscribe. So this here is pretty much everything I have to do the job. For my air compressor, I did a bunch of research and I finally settled on the Viair 400C. Now there are some cheaper air compressors that have a higher output rate, but really what you're looking for is a more constant output rate at pressure. A lot of air compressors, once it starts building pressure, that output rate will start dropping off dramatically, and I really trust Viair. They're a good product. I also like that I can get replacement parts for them if I ever need to. I've got some tubing that I'm going to use for my airlines. I bought an assortment of these quick connects. It comes with some splitters, some 90s, also comes with some T's and some butt connectors. I also bought a pretty large package of these here. Now this here, it goes from a quick connect to a screwed on 1/4 inch NPT. I also have my pressure switch. Now this pressure switch is designed to kick the air compressor on at 90 psi, and once it reaches 115, it should shut the air compressor off. So I've also got a pressure relief valve here. Now this is designed to purge the system after the pressure reaches 150 to keep everything safe. I also have a water and oil separator. This is just a good air filter. It's going to be in line with the system. It also has a drain on it so you can drain the filter if necessary. I've got my air compressor switch. I also have an assortment of brass connectors that I'm going to be using in this project also. I also have an inline mega fuse, as well as a relay that is rated for this project. I also have this cheap kit I picked up at Harbor Freight. It has all my fittings that I'm going to need. Now for my air tank, I actually have an old oxygen tank. This is a medical oxygen tank. These are rated at a very, very high PSI. I did have to get an adapter for the top of it. Wasn't too expensive. This is just what I had laying around. You got to use what you got. There are some small tanks that you can purchase online. If you're interested in any of these items, I will leave Amazon links down in the description below. So I still have everything tore apart from when I did my rear winch video. You can check it out over here. This is where I'm going to be running all my airlines. I'm also going to be mounting my air tank in the side here somewhere, as well as my air compressor in the spot where the spare tire used to mount. Now I'm wanting to mount at least 2 air fittings, one in the back and one in the front. So I'm going to start with that and then start running my lines. So for the back of the Jeep, I'm actually going to mount my air fitting back here next to my fuel cap. I'm going to mount it kind of up here. I know that it'll clear the door, and I know that it'll clear the cap as well as when I fill it. So I think this will be a good place. It's also protected. So where I'm going to mount my tank is behind this panel here. Now if you have a 4-door model, you might have to mount it a little bit further back if you're deciding on mounting it in here. But there is plenty of space in here for everything that you need. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to mount it up underneath here, and I'm going to use a couple of hose clamps to hold it in place. Now when installing your pressure switch, you don't want it to be too close to your source of air. The reason for this is when your air compressor is pushing all that air through to pressurize the entire system, this might register that pressure too early. And what will end up happening is your air compressor will shut off. It'll disperse that pressure really fast and it'll kick back on, and it'll keep doing that, and it's going to cause a lot of drain on your air compressor. Now, what I like to do is mount it as close to my tank as possible, or on my tank if possible. So on my tank here, I'm going to have a T, and I'm just going to mount it right off to that T. Now that I know where all my airlines are going to run in the cab, I'm going to go ahead and run all my airlines through this panel here. Now when running all my airlines, I'm using this plastic line here with some quick connect fittings. So everywhere I want a T or a bend, or I've got some 90-degree angles, I got a quick connect. It's really simple. Just plugs in, and it's an airtight fitting. If for some reason you need to pull it apart, it's really easy. We can just push down on the tab and it'll actually come out. That's what I love about these quick connect fittings. Also, if for some reason you have a leak, you can just cut it right where your leak is and reconnect it with one of these butt connectors. So I'm going to go ahead and run my airlines inside the cab where I want them to run, and we'll go on from there. Now, To get my air lines to the front of the Jeep, what I'm going to do is I'm going to run them underneath. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come off of the front of the tank here. It's going to run down. It's going to go underneath my seat here. And underneath the carpet, there's a couple of rubber plugs. I'm just going to knock one of them out, use that existing hole, and route it underneath. Now that our air line is through our floorboard, I'm just going to put a 90 connector right here and then parallel the brake line all the way to the front. Now where my line runs through next to my skid plate here, I'm going to add a valve. Now this will be to drain any moisture out of the line, also to dump all the air if I need to. And I'm going to mount it above this skid plate. That way it's protected and I can still reach up here and drain the system. So now that I've ran my air line all the way to the front along the frame, I need to decide where I'm going to mount my air fitting up here. Now I kind of want it to be tucked away. I don't necessarily want it to be off the front here. A lot of people will just mount it straight up and down right here. I step on this a lot. I also use it as kind of like a table. Also, my kids like to climb up here, so this is going to be in the way. So what I think I'm going to do is just come into this channel where the winch is located and just kind of mount it in through the side like this. So for my pressure relief valve, what I'm going to do is I'm going to tee off of my line somewhere and bring it up into my engine compartment. Now the reason why I'm going to do that is it puts it somewhere outside the vehicle, but also somewhere accessible and protected. So now that all my air lines are ran, I need to leak check it. And I figured the best way to do that would just be to connect it to my shop air using my pressure gauge. Looks like we still have a few leaks. Now if you do have some leaks, the easiest way to find them is with some soapy water. Just spray it on your connectors and it'll create a bubble wherever you got a leak. I'm actually leaking where I rigged it up, so we're good. So now that I know that I don't have any leaks here behind this panel, it's time to take care of the wiring. Now when I ran my power back here for the rear winch, I also went ahead and ran 6 of these 16 gauge wires because I know eventually I'm going to want switched power back here. So what I'm going to do for my wiring, a 16 gauge wire here, this is going to be coming off of our switch. For our power, I'm going to be using that bar that I installed when I installed my rear winch. I'm just going to come off of one of those and that's going to feed my power. So how it's going to work is I'm going to come off of that bus bar, through a fuse, then through a relay, and then to my air compressor. For the switch, it's going to run from the switch, through our pressure switch, and then to our relay. So this is what I got going on for my wiring. Now, I've got my bus bar, which is my positive battery, which will feed my relay. My relay feeds my compressor, and I've got my switch over here, and the switch will run through the pressure switch to activate the relay. So that way when we turn our switch on, it'll activate the relay and it will allow a connection between the positive battery and the compressor. Now when the pressure switch senses 115 psi, it will not allow the connection to the relay from the switch and it will shut it off. And once it drops down to 90, it'll allow it to come back on again. Now with all my wiring done and all my tubing ran, I'm going to go ahead and put this panel back on here so I can figure out how I want to mount my compressor. One of the great things about an oilless air compressor is it doesn't matter how you mount it. So you can mount it vertical, you can mount it sideways, doesn't matter, it'll do the same job. However, it is recommended that you don't mount it upside down because the head unit does not dissipate the heat as easily because heat rises. So if you mount it upside down, it might overheat. Now the way that I've decided to mount it is I'm going to rig a bracket to mount it right here where the spare tire used to be. So I'm pretty much done back here with the exception of a couple of wires. When you're hooking up your air compressor, don't forget you're going to want to put your filter on before you connect the rest of the system. Now all that's left is to wire up your switch. Hopefully you liked this video. If you did, give it a thumbs up. As always, don't forget to subscribe. You can check me out on Instagram at It's Project Venture, as well as TikTok at It's Project Venture. Thanks for watching.